Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of the day it is for you. My name is Eva Marie Everson. I'm the president of Word Weavers International, the director of Florida Christian Writers Conference. This is an episode of Eva Marie and the Experts. And today's expert is my good friend, James Scott Bell. If you don't know who James Scott Bell is, you should. How can you possibly be a writer and not know who James Scott Bell is? So we're going to go way back, Jim. We've known each other for like 20 years.
Yeah.
We're one of the first people I met in the industry. You were a trial lawyer. Yeah.
Was indeed, yes.
Was indeed, yes. And you had a series about the time I met you, the Kit Shannon series that I remember reading and enjoying. A female attorney at the turn of the century. So
yeah, that was an idea I had to do something different with a legal thriller.
Yeah.
And the history of Los Angeles at the turn of the last century, the early 1900s, is fascinating history. So I thought, and women were just starting to practice law. So I thought, hey, this would be a perfect scenario. And got teamed up with Tracy Peterson by Bethany House for the first 3 books. It was great.
Yeah. And she was also one of the first people I met in the industry. But then all of a sudden, all these books started coming out by James Scott Bell that were about writing and plot and structure and this and that. How did that happen? How did you were working with Writer's Digest, no?
Yeah, I had to teach myself how to write. And after being told in college that you could never learn how to write, either had it or you didn't. And I believed that. And then, about 10 years after that, I finally said, I got to try. And so I'd been through law school and I kind of approached it as a study program, started reading books. Can I learn from books? Well, over the years, I began to learn the craft and I got published and I started doing workshops and I thought, I want to share this with others. And I started writing for Writer's Digest magazine. And then they asked me to be their fiction columnist for a while, which was great. Yeah. And then I did books for them, and I've done a series of books on my own as well.
So how many books have you written that are, let's say, in your fiction series? How many books have you written or co-written? And
well, I have a series that I'm marketing right now on Amazon called Bell on Writing. Gee, how did I come up with that name?
I don't know. Ding,
anyway.
ding, ding.
Well, 12 books on various subjects. And then I've got several for Writer's Digest books, which is now owned by Penguin Random House. And those continue. Plot and Structure was the first one in 2004. And that has consistently been selling since then. So a lot of people have come up to me and said that, they learned from that book. So,
Yeah. So what about novels? How many novels do you have under your belts?
Well, I haven't counted.
When last we spoke,
probably 30. I was traditionally published and enjoyed that. But then when the indie revolution started to happen, I made kind of a financial decision to go in that direction. Also creatively, I could write more and, publish when I was actually ready.
When you were ready, yes. Yeah.
So that's about where I am right now.
Yeah. So this afternoon, it is afternoon for us. I think it's actually morning for you. You're in the Los Angeles area.
Late morning.
Florida. Yeah, we're like two opposite sides of the country, but morning or afternoon, whatever time it is. We're going to talk today about a book that came out, I believe it was around 2014, titled "Write Your Novel from the Middle." It's got a very long subtitle. We won't even get into that.
Well, the main thing is it's for plotters and pantsers.
And pantsers.
Oh,
yes.
I've solved, world peace I brought between those.
There you go. Yes. So, and I want to talk about that in just a moment, about what is the difference in a plotter and a pantser, so you can explain that. But this is some of the things I've read about this book, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about this book. This is what I read. It's a powerful secret. And that's so true. It is a fresh approach, also true. And then one of the reviewers, I thought this was great, says, this book explains everything. I love it. This book explains everything. I thought that was great. I remember reading it and feeling like Oh my gosh, it was like the sun was shining, the birds were singing. You're right. Oh my gosh. And I started looking at books, at movies, et cetera, and thinking, Jim has hit on something here. So talk about, I mean, how did you come up with this?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, what is a plotter? What is a pantser? How did you come up with this? How did you realize it? And then tell us more about your book.
Well, plotters, pantsers, people who like to outline or plan their plots first, and then those who are more intuitive and they just like to write freely without thinking ahead too much. And there's all kinds of permutations in between. I'm actually kind of an amalgam of both.
Yeah, me
But
too.
some people call them plantsers.
Plantsers, yes.
But what this concept of write your novel from the middle is so valuable in its it can come at any point. You can be planning it first, or if you're just kind of getting lost in your manuscript, you can actually go to this point and brainstorm it, and it'll help you then. So really, this is not something that anybody ever wrote about or explained before. And the reason I got to it was I was thinking about structure. I'm a structure guy.
Sure.
And I was thinking about the midpoint. I never really thought that there was much to say about the midpoint, because you're in the middle of Act 2 and you've got rising and falling action, and it should be getting tenser and tenser and so on. But I said, okay, let me see if I can study this out a little bit, see if I've missed anything. And I read articles and some books, and when they talk about the midpoint scene, I found contradictory advice. I found it kind of fuzzy. I didn't find it real helpful. So I thought, okay, let me go in and start looking at some examples. And I always go to movies and classic movies and popular novels. So the first movie I always go to for anything is Casablanca.
There you go.
So I just put the DVD in, went to the middle and started looking around, and I found something interesting. There's a moment in the middle of Casablanca where the hero, Rick, he's the anti-hero really, has to look at himself and think, gosh, is this who I am? He's just insulted the woman that he loved, and she's gone out in tears, and he's disgusted with himself. Kind of interesting. And so I went to some other films, The Fugitive, and in The Fugitive, it's interesting, I found in this dead center a very similar pose in the actor, putting head down like this, only he wasn't thinking about what kind of person he was. He was thinking the odds are too great. I'm going to die. Yeah. And so as I explored books, I went to Gone with the Wind, I went all to these books, the Hunger Games, I found a consistency in what was happening in the middle. And it's a moment. I call it the mirror moment.
The mirror moment. Yeah.
When somebody has to look at themselves. It happens in a scene, can be any kind of scene, but there's that moment when they have to reflect on their situation and who they are. Yeah.
And that is what's so interesting, because I started noticing, like this movie's going to be an hour and a half, so it's going to be about this point. That mirror moment's going to happen. Or if I'm reading a book, okay, I'm getting just about to the middle, so that mirror moment is going to happen, and I can pick up any movie, any book that I knew well, or a movie that I knew well, and go back and go, yep, there it is.
It's kind of interesting, because I think it's with the good storytellers, people know what they're doing. It kind of happens instinctively. And what I wanted to do was talk about it in a way that would make it accessible to anybody. I call it like popping the hood on the engine and seeing how it works. So I wrote the book in order to help people understand what was happening and how they could apply it to their own work. Now, the reason I did that is because when I first experienced this and kind of discovered what was going on, it blew my head away. I thought, this is fantastic.
Yeah, this is making everything so much easier.
It helped me, it helped my writing. And then I started suggesting it to some people, and lo and behold, they said the same thing. And then the book came out, and it's overwhelming how many people say it's helped them. So,
oh my gracious. Yeah. And even seasoned writers, seasoned writers who've been doing it forever all of a sudden, oh yes, this makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed was how many Hallmark movies, and I'm not like a huge like the Hallmark Christmas movies. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, remember the old Hallmark movies that used to come on Sunday nights, the Hallmark Hall of Fame movies, and how many of them hit at about 20, 25 minutes. That was when you went to your first commercial, your Hallmark cards. And that was when I realized that's the first pillar.
Ah, yes.
That is when you could actually turn around and go back the other way.
Right.
But if we're going to keep going with this story, we got to continue on the bridge. So can you talk about the pillars and the bridge for just a moment?
Yeah, well, that's the overall structure, a 3-act structure, beginning, middle, and end, which we all have to understand, or beginning, muddle, and end, I like to put it.
Right.
And then that's the first act is in classic screenplay structure, it's 1/4 of the film, and then you have the last act is 1/4, and then that full half in between. With books, I found novels, I found it really should be no greater than 1/5 that first act, because otherwise it starts to drag. But in any event, what happens is you open up with the lead in their ordinary world, kind of mythic structure, the ordinary world, and they're going to be in this act 2, which is all about death. It's about either physical death, psychological death, or professional death. It's got the stakes are that high, and the normal character doesn't want to go through that door because that's where death is.
Right.
So something has to happen. The first pillar, I call it the doorway of no return. If something has to push that character through the doorway slams shut. So they can't go back that way. They got to continue the story. Think of the Wizard of Oz. I mean, she is picked up, deposited in this land of Technicolor. She can't turn around and go right back to Kansas. She has to go all the way through the plot and the death stakes in order to get back. So that's kind of what that is all about.
Yeah. And what I like about it is like at that point, Dorothy could have sat down at the tip of the yellow brick road. She could have just sat down and said, I'm not moving. Not moving. Well, then you've just got a 1-act play, don't you? It's like she has a choice here, but once she hits that second pillar, all the choices are gone. You only have one way out. You've got to go straight through. And when I realized that whole suspension bridge thing, it's like, you're driving across the suspension bridge, and if you get to the first pillar, you may go, you know what? There's no traffic. There's no oncoming traffic. I can actually whip this thing around and just go, I don't think I want to do this. But by the time you hit that second pillar, you don't have any other choices except to keep going. Yeah.
You are stuck in this act 2 death struggle.
Yes.
And then act 3 is going to be the final battle, the final resolution.
Yes.
And you put it perfectly. That's how it's got to feel to the reader, that the character can't just go back. If they could solve their problem by going back, the reader would say, why don't they do that?
Right, exactly. And that's why we love good books. That's why we love good books with a good plot.
And so the mirror moment in all of this, which is right there in the middle, is something that illuminates what's going on inside the character for that whole storyline. And that's the key secret. This is what your story is really all about.
Right.
You've got the outward plot, but it's really about the character and how they are transformed by what they go through. And it's this transformational arc, and it's right in the middle. They have this realization: either I've got to reclaim my humanity, or I've got to change.
Right.
Something's got to change, or they think, you know what? I'm probably going to die. How do I go on?
Exactly. How do I survive this? Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, even like you think about Gone with the Wind. It was a perfect that intermission moment in the movie.
Right.
And I'm thinking it hits pretty much the same in the book, is, when she raises that radish into the air and says, with as God is my witness, I will never go hungry again. She has completely looked internally and changed as a person. She realizes that her dreams of preservation of the Old South and all of that's gone completely. That's gone. Yeah.
She can't have it anymore. And so now she's got a choice. How can she go on? Can she give up? Does she give up? But no, she's going to go on and with the strength of will,
Yes.
try to make things different.
And she's no longer the fiddly-dee little girl that was,
Right.
talking to the Tarleton twins at the opening of the book and fanning herself with her little fan, and everything was about a barbecue. Everything was about a party and about marrying Ashley somehow, some way. Now it's about preservation, and it's about
That's a good point, is that, we sometimes people say, what's more important, plot or character? And I say, look, you can have a great character, but if you got no plot, you're not going to know who that character really is.
Right.
What the plot does, the conflict does, is it forces the character to reveal their true selves and what they're going to do to transform. So we could have 100 pages of Scarlett sitting on the front porch, but that's not going to do it for us.
No.
What does is the Civil War.
Right.
And boom, suddenly she is forced into that conflict.
Yes.
So.
Well, and I like what the book talks about, that it's physical or professional or psychological.
Right.
I love the 3 Ps. Very good, Jim. and I think sometimes that we forget that psychological is a death or a rebirth or a living, that is important as to what happens to that person psychologically. It doesn't have to be about literally physically living or dying, or professionally, making, getting the advancement or losing the job or finding a job or whatever. But the psychological change, when I'm talking to new writers, they say, well, how do I present, that elevator pitch? How do I present this elevator pitch? One of the things I listen for is, are you going to tell me that this is a book about, let's say, for example, Gone with the Wind? We'll just stick with that one because it's a great, this is a book about the Civil War. No, this is a book about a woman who is a young woman at the beginning of the Civil War who pushes through. And now you start talking about this woman and you tie the plot in with it. But it's about the character.
Yeah, the way I like to describe what is a novel? What's the essence of it? And the way I put it is this: it's about a character who, through strength of will, meaning they have to take the initiative, they have to push back, they have to not be passive, through strength of will, fights with death.
Yes.
And so if you think of it in those terms, then you won't have a weak through line to the plot.
Yeah.
You will have someone who is forced to confront these challenges, which again brings out their true character.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is who they are.
Yeah.
Back to the mirror moment. We're right back to the mirror moment. Yeah. It was funny. I was watching a movie not too long ago, and actually a few years ago, now that I think about it, everything is like, was it pre-COVID or post-COVID? So pre-COVID, and I knew we were getting to the mirror moment, and literally the character was looking in the mirror. It was like, literally looked in the mirror and went, oh.
It's funny how often that seems to happen. In fact, when I was first kind of developing this, my wife and I wanted to just watch a movie for entertainment. And my wife said, there's that Kevin Costner movie, No Way Out, which we had seen years before. I thought, that's a good one. Yeah. So we got the DVD. We're sitting there watching it. And all of a sudden, I pick up the remote and I stop it. And she goes, what are you doing? And I said, you are about to see what a genius your husband is.
Yeah.
And then she rolled her eyes, which is good. I need that.
Yeah.
But what I did was I looked at the timer and I sensed that this was about to happen, this mirror moment. And we were right in the middle. I started up again. And this is what happened. The very next scene, Kevin Costner goes into a bathroom.
Yes.
He looks in the mirror.
Yes.
And he's thinking, oh no.
Yeah.
Everything has changed.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was rather amusing.
And isn't it funny though? Yeah, that moment. And we always say, don't start a novel with your character looking in the mirror. But if you can just get them to the middle, then in the mirror.
Don't do the description in the mirror.
Right. Oh, I know. Yeah.
She looked at her auburn hair and green eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Or I had one years ago. I was a new writer. I wasn't the new writer. This person was a new writer. And I'm reading and they being stopped by police officer, license and registration, and she pulls out her license and looks down at it and gives her entire description. I'm like, no.
That's a shortcut.
That was better than looking in the mirror, I thought, but maybe not unless there's, like she's not really the person in the license, then maybe so. So Jim, what are you reading right now?
Oh, you mean book-wise?
Yeah, what are you reading right now?
Wow, okay. Well, I've been reading, I read a lot of nonfiction, kind of expand just the knowledge base. So for nonfiction, I'm reading a biography of the character actor Sterling Hayden, who most people remember from Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
That one scene he plays Jack D. Ripper.
Yeah.
And I'm reading that because I've always found him a fascinating guy. He has a very complex story. In fact, I'm thinking of writing a blog post about the concept that what we should write is simple plots about complex characters.
Right.
The plot should be easy to understand in terms of a character needs this and they're confronted by this, but the characters themselves are what bring complexity. So I'm reading that biography. And I'm reading another one called Raised Eyebrows, which is about to be made into a movie.
Oh.
It's about Groucho Marx's last days.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Rush is going to play Groucho.
Oh, wow.
And the book was written by my high school friend.
Oh, well, there you go.
Who was Groucho's secretary. And so I'm rereading the book because I'm reliving our high school days together.
Oh, that's fun. That's not yours and Groucho's.
There's a little bit of a difference there. Although I did get to meet Groucho a couple of times because of my connection with Steve.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you were talking about your blog very quickly. You do have a website. You have a blog there. Can you talk about that for just a quick moment?
The blog it's called Killzone Authors. You can find it by Googling Killzone Authors.
Just like it sounds. KILLZONE. Yeah.
And then my website is jamesscottbell.com. Anything you want to know is there. Links to all my books and so on.
All right. And so what are you working on right now?
I am working on the next in my Mike Romeo Thrillers series. Yes. I've done six of them, and just rolling along.
Just rolling along with Mike.
Rolling along. I'm a hamster on a wheel.
Yes.
Every now and then my wife, throws in some, mixed nuts.
A nibble. Yeah.
Keep running.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much for joining us again. My guest today has been the incomparable James Scott Bell. I am so glad that you took this time to talk with us. I'm also so glad you're my friend.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Pleasure seeing you again and knowing you for these 20 years. And thank you for the work that you do for writers, because with your talent, you could just sit behind a desk and just write all the fiction in the world. But the fact that you give so much to young writers and to seasoned writers as well, we really appreciate you, Jim. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to end the recording right now, and we'll see you next month with another episode of Eva Marie and the Experts. You have a great day. Keep writing.